On my wedding night, my husband abandoned me to be with his lover. The next day my mother-in-law screamed, "You don't know how to please my son, now you'll have to deal with it." But she turned pale when she learned what I had done to her beloved son. They say a wedding night is magical. For Camila, it was the last time she believed in love. Camila was 27, with a smile that seemed invincible. Her sweetness wasn't feigned. She hadn't been trained to please, it was just her nature. She worked as a teacher at a community center and dreamed of having a family, a simple home, and Sundays filled with homemade bread and movies on the sofa. She didn't ask for luxury, she asked for love, and she thought she had found it in Julian. Julian was everything a woman could desire, at least in appearance. Well-dressed, with a firm voice, a deep gaze, educated and gallant. She met him at a charity gala organized by one of her friends from her volunteer work. He had donated computers for the neighborhood kids. He said he loved to help and admired women like her. That night, Camila went home with a racing heart, not because of what he had, but because of how he had made her feel important. And so it all began. Months of flowers, letters, and candlelight dinners. Camila, who had no experience with men like this, believed she was living a fairy tale. She introduced him to her family with pride. Julian was charming to everyone, even to Aunt Elda, who always found flaws in her niece's boyfriends. Julian made her laugh. After 8 months, he knelt in the middle of a sunset picnic and proposed. Camila trembled, not from fear but from emotion. She said yes with tears in her eyes. The wedding was small but elegant. Julian insisted on covering all the costs. She barely understood why he was in such a hurry, but she thought it was because he loved her so much. The flowers, the photographers, the guests in long dresses. Everything seemed straight out of a romantic movie. And yet, there were details that grated. Julian's mother, Mrs. Teresa, didn't look her in the eye throughout the ceremony. When she hugged her, it felt like she was touching a block of ice. Beside them, Julian's cousin Valerie was laughing with him conspiratorially. She hugged him more than was necessary. During the photo session, she even kissed him on the cheek, too close to his mouth. Camila wanted to think it was her insecurity. She didn't have perfect curves or Valerie's sparkle, or the heels that the other women in Julian's family wore. But he always told her he adored her naturalness, that it made her special. The banquet was long, full of speeches. Julian seemed happy. Camila was too, though something inside her began to twist when she saw him checking his phone repeatedly. "Is everything okay?" she whispered, taking his arm. "Yes, my love, it's work, but tonight is our night, don't worry about a thing." The party lasted until almost 3 a.m. Guests began to leave with hugs and selfies. Camila said goodbye to her parents with a lump in her throat. She was no longer just a daughter, she was a wife. Upon arriving at the hotel suite, she took off her heels, sighed, and hugged him from behind. Julian was standing there, looking at his phone again. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too, my love, but I need to go out for a bit. It's an urgent issue with the suppliers in Panama. I won't be long. Go back to bed. Get comfortable. I'll bring you something from the minibar if you want." She smiled, not understanding, but said nothing. Julian left. Camila waited. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. She looked at the clock at 5 a.m. and felt her body turn cold. She texted him, called him. Nothing. She opened the curtains, hoping to see his figure crossing the parking lot. Nothing. The sun was beginning to rise, and her wedding dress still hung on the chair, a silent witness to a broken promise. She showered, got dressed, and gathered her things in silence. As she left the hotel, the receptionist smiled conspiratorially. "Everything good, Mrs. Lopez?" Yes, everything's fine," she lied. She didn't want anyone to know. Not yet. She got into a taxi and went straight to Julian's house. As she entered, she found the housekeeper cleaning the entrance floor. "Mr. Julian?" she asked, feigning confidence. "He left last night. He hasn't come back. Mrs. Lopez is upstairs having breakfast." Camila went up. Her heart was beating as if it would break her ribs. Mrs. Teresa looked her up and down. Camila hadn't slept. She had dark circles under her eyes, her voice was trembling. "Good morning, mother-in-law," she said, her voice cracking. "Mother-in-law? Do you still think you're part of this family?" The woman replied, not bothering to hide her disdain. Camila didn't understand. Julian didn't come back. He left in the early morning. He left me alone in the room. The woman put her cup on the saucer with a sharp clatter. Her eyes were like knives. "And what did you expect? You're such a prim, boring, unsensual woman. Did you really think my son would stay with you after that miserable night?" Camila felt herself fading. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, child, you don't know how to seduce a man. Or did you expect my son to fall in love with a woman who dresses like a grandma and never knew how to make a man desire her? You couldn't please him. Now you'll have to deal with it." Camila swallowed. She wanted to respond, but she couldn't. "Leave. Don't make a fool of yourself. Don't ever show up at this house again. It was embarrassing enough to have you sitting at our table. Where is Julian? With someone who knows how to treat him, someone who isn't a scared little girl or a rag doll." At that moment, Valerie came down the stairs. Camila looked at her. She was wearing a shirt she recognized instantly. It was Julian's. Valerie looked at her with an almost innocent smile. "I didn't know you were here," she said, as if it were a simple misunderstanding. Camila left without a word. Her legs wouldn't hold her. She went down the stairs as if the world had tilted backward. When she stepped outside, the sun was already beating down hard. She sat down at the bus stop, alone, with her wedding dress in a plastic bag. A child stared at her from the seat next to her. She tried to smile, but she couldn't. The narrator enters. And just like that, in less than 24 hours, Camila went from being a wife to an obstacle. But what Mrs. Teresa didn't know, what Valerie didn't know, and what Julian knew even less, was that the woman they had just trampled would be the one who would one day bring them down. Camila didn't cry at the bus stop. She didn't scream. She didn't break down like anyone else in her place would have. She just stood still, as if her body didn't know what to do, as if her soul had gone on a trip without notice. She held the plastic bag with both hands, the one that held her wedding dress, still smelling of perfume and disillusionment. The wind blew with indifference. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked. She got on the bus with her last few coins. The driver gave her a sidelong glance, and she avoided eye contact. She got off 2 stops before her destination. She didn't want her family to see her like this. Her mother had died 5 years ago. Her father was never around. She had a distant aunt who lived on the outskirts, but she didn't even know if she was still alive. She decided to go to the house of an old childhood friend, Martha, who lived alone and with whom she had lost contact. She rang the doorbell hard, hoping something inside that house would light up. Martha opened the door with a confused look, but upon seeing Camila with her blank stare and the white bag, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged her. "What happened?" she whispered. Camila didn't respond, she just collapsed. For the first time since the night before, her body reacted. She folded. She cried with her whole chest, as if her soul was being pulled out of her throat. Martha didn't press. She let her in, served her some tea, lent her clothes, offered her bed. 3 days passed before Camila could tell her everything, and when she did, Martha was silent. She didn't know what to say. The story seemed straight out of a movie about betrayal and cruelty, but it wasn't fiction. It was her reality. "That guy," Martha said with contained rage. "That guy has no forgiveness. And your cousin, don't even get me started." Camila didn't look at her. She was sitting in front of the window, hugging a pillow. "He erased me. Julian blocked me from everything, phone, social media, even email, as if I had never existed." Martha approached and took her hand. "You'll get through this. I swear." But the fall was just beginning. Camila tried to ask a couple of acquaintances for help. None of them wanted to get involved. They were all somehow related to Julian's family. They feared retaliation, scandal. Her world, as small as it was closing in on her. Fast. Staying at Martha's house couldn't be forever. Martha was a nurse, worked double shifts, and lived on a shoestring budget. Camila didn't want to be a burden. She went out looking for a job. She took resumes to stores, cafes, daycares. No one called her back. After 2 weeks, walking aimlessly, she saw a sign taped to a window. "Help wanted cleaning staff. Night shift. Paid daily." The sign was at the entrance of a roadside motel. It wasn't the place Camila had imagined for rebuilding herself. But at that moment, all she had was need. She entered. The manager looked her up and down. He said nothing about her clean clothes and innocent face. He just handed her a broom, a rag, and a bucket. "Do you have experience?" "I learn fast. You start tonight. Room 6. The client just left. It's a mess. Take gloves." Camila nodded, pressing her lips together. She wasn't ready, but no one is when everything is taken away from them. The first nights were a blunt blow to her dignity. She picked up strangers' underwear, stained sheets, empty bottles. She heard moans, fights, and dirty laughter through the walls. The smell of the detergent wasn't enough to erase what she felt. On one of those shifts, while cleaning room 3, she stopped in front of the mirror. She didn't recognize herself. Her hair was tied back with an old scrunchie, her eyes had dark circles, her lips were chapped. There was nothing left of the bride who, just days before, believed her life was about to begin. She then remembered the first time she saw Julian. He had come to the community center with a warm smile. He had knelt to talk to the children. He told her he admired her vocation. "Women like you are golden," he had said, looking at her with tenderness. She believed he meant it. Today she knew the gold he was interested in was not in her soul. Weeks passed. Camila was paid in cash every night and saved it in an old box that Martha had given her. She used just enough to eat. The rest she saved. Not because she had a plan, but because she needed to feel that at least something was under her control. One afternoon, leaving her shift, she ran into Valerie. She was dressed as if she had stepped out of a magazine. Red heels, a tight dress, a designer bag. Camila recognized her from a distance. Valerie also saw her and, instead of changing sides of the street, walked directly toward her. "Look who's alive. What a miracle." Camila didn't respond. She kept walking. "Do you work here? How interesting. I thought you'd be hiding in some corner crying as usual." Camila stopped. Not out of fear, but out of contained rage. "What do you want?" Valerie laughed. "Just saying hello. Among family. Although, well, after what you did, I don't know if that counts." "What I did?" "Yes, trying to hold on to a man who clearly wasn't for you. I told you from the beginning, love isn't for just anyone, not for someone like you." Camila took a deep breath, looked her in the eyes. "You were wrong about one thing. I didn't want to hold on to him. I wanted him to be happy, but it seems that didn't matter to him either." Valerie let out a loud laugh. "Oh, Camila, you're still so pathetic. How sweet. Take care. Don't get any dirtier." She walked away, laughing. Camila didn't cry. No, this time she kept walking, straighter, more aware. Something inside her was starting to change. Rage wasn't her enemy, it was her fire. The following weeks were silent. Work, Martha, routine. But inside her head, an idea was beginning to grow. She didn't want revenge. She wanted to understand why. Why had they used her? Why had Julian's family despised her so much? What was behind it all? One night, while scrubbing the bathroom of room 8, a client entered. He apologized when he saw her. "Sorry, I thought it was already clean." Camila stood up and smiled. "Don't worry, I'm just finishing up." The man observed her in silence. He was in his mid-50s. Well-dressed. He seemed not to fit in with the rest of the clientele. "Have you worked here long?" "A few weeks." "You don't seem like you're from here. It shows in your eyes. You're so much more." Camila lowered her head, uncomfortable. "I'm just trying to work." The man nodded. "That's good. Working with dignity, even if it hurts. There are those who prefer to steal the souls of others before earning their bread." She looked at him, surprised. He smiled. "Sorry if I was imprudent. Sometimes you recognize pain when you've lived it." He left, leaving her with a racing heart. That phrase stayed in her mind. That night, upon leaving the motel, Camila didn't go straight to Martha's house. She walked, feeling the air on her face. She stopped in front of a storefront and looked at herself again. The same woman, the same face, but now with something new in her eyes. There was no longer just sadness, there was something more, something she didn't even know she had. Strength. And without knowing it yet, she was starting to wake up. From that night on, when a stranger told her she didn't belong in that place, Camila was never the same. The words hung in her memory like a song she didn't know when she learned, but never forgot. She walked differently, observed differently, started to think differently. A few weeks later, she decided to quit the motel job. She had some money saved, not much, but enough to cover a few days of food and transportation. She felt that if she stayed there, her soul would eventually get used to that darkness. And that was something she couldn't allow. She had already lived too many airless nights. One Monday morning, walking through the city center, she found a sign nailed to the entrance of a small local building that read, "Volunteers needed for community educational programs." The place was humble, with unpainted brick walls and a half-finished children's mural. The sign didn't offer money, but it offered something Camila needed even more: purpose. She entered. She was greeted by a kind-faced woman with thick glasses and her hair tied in a messy bun. "Hi, are you here for the ad?" she asked. "Yes. I don't have formal NGO experience, but I used to be a teacher. I can help with classes or whatever you need." The woman looked at her carefully. Her eyes seemed to see beyond words. "It will do you good to be here. I can hear in your voice that you need a new beginning." Camila smiled for the first time in a long time. She was assigned a group of children to help with reading and writing. They were small, many with absent fathers or mothers who worked in factories all day. She immersed herself in that world with all her heart. They painted, read, and sang. And Camila began to remember the woman she had been before the disaster. Slowly, she recovered parts of herself she thought were destroyed. It was there, at that center, that she met Mr. Ignacio, an elderly man, silent, with a slow gait but a lively gaze. He always sat in a corner, reading thick law books and drinking chamomile tea. No one knew much about him. Some said he had been a judge, others that he was just an eccentric old man who helped with the accounting. One afternoon, while Camila was drawing with the children, he approached and left a book on the table for her. "For you. I read it when I was your age. It changed the way I think." She took it in her hands. The title read, "The Power of Knowing Who You Are." "Thank you. I didn't know things like that were still being written." "Of course they are. The hard part isn't reading them. The hard part is understanding them when you need them most." From then on, Mr. Ignacio and Camila began to talk frequently. He asked her few questions, but when he did, they were precise questions, not about what had happened, but about what she felt now. "What do you do with your anger?" he said once. Camila looked at him, surprised by the question. "I swallow it. Sometimes it chokes me, but I don't know what else to do with it." "Don't swallow it. Study it. Anger speaks, too. It tells you where the truth is." He began to lend her books, history, basic laws, emotional psychology. Camila devoured them. At first as a distraction, then out of a real hunger to understand. She felt that for the first time, she was building something within herself that didn't depend on anyone else. And that, after so much abandonment, was a new luxury. While her world was silently repairing itself, Julian's world continued as if nothing had happened. She discovered it by accident, leafing through a magazine left behind in a clinic waiting room. The cover hit her right in the chest. Entrepreneurs changing the country. Julian Lopez and Valerie Rodriguez, the couple revolutionizing the social investment sector. Camila felt dizzy, took a deep breath, and turned the page. There they were, posing in front of a colorful mural, surrounded by children, smiling as if they were the epitome of modern philanthropy. The article talked about a foundation called Future Horizon, created by them to promote rural education with private capital, donations, government agreements, and corporate support. The numbers were large, the impact even more so. But what made Camila's heart almost fall to the floor was the secondary image. Julian receiving a plaque of recognition at a formal event. He wore a black suit, a gray tie, and on his right hand, the gold ring with a green stone that Camila remembered with absolute clarity. That ring wasn't his. It was her grandfather's, the only object that had disappeared when her mother died. A ring that was always said to have immense sentimental value. Her grandfather, according to her mother, had been a reserved man with a history full of gaps. No one knew much about him, except that he disappeared off the map when Camila was 5 years old. He left one night and never came back. No funeral, no inheritance, no trace. She kept staring at that image. Her hands were trembling. The past she had buried began to stir like an animal waking up after years of sleep. She took the magazine with her, putting it in her bag as if she were hiding evidence of something she couldn't yet explain. That same night, she went to see Mr. Ignacio. They were sitting in the center's courtyard with a dim lamp on and the distant chirping of crickets breaking the silence. "Look at this," she said, showing him the picture. Mr. Ignacio looked at it. Then he lowered his gaze to the ring. His expression changed. "That ring, are you sure?" "Absolutely. It was my grandfather's. I only saw it once. My mom had it saved. She said he gave it to her before he left. It disappeared when she died." The old man said nothing for a few seconds. Then he got up, went to his backpack, and took out a sealed envelope. He placed it on the table without a word. "I don't want to put ideas in your head, Camila, but there were things that didn't add up to me for a while. This is going to sound strange, but your last name caught my attention the first day I saw you here. It seemed familiar. I looked it up and found this." Camila opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were papers, many of them, copies of records, fragments of unfinished wills, and a notarial report that spoke of a patrimony blocked by unresolved legal proceedings. In all the documents appeared her grandfather's name and her name, Camila Rodriguez Ortega. "What is this?" "Your grandfather had a small fortune. He wasn't a tycoon, but he had assets, stocks, and properties. No one ever legally claimed them because he was never officially declared deceased. He disappeared, yes, but legally he was still alive until a few months ago. And you appear as the sole heiress because your mother was an only child. These documents are public, but very few people know how to look for them. And I found them because I had a suspicion. Camila didn't understand. Suspicion of what? Mr. Ignacio looked at her seriously. That everything that happened to you was not a coincidence. She felt the ground open up under her, leaning against the back of her chair and letting the magazine fall onto the table. The ring shone under the lamplight as if it knew it had been discovered. Are you saying Julian? I'm saying that maybe he knew about this before you did, and that your marriage wasn't just for love. Camila pressed her lips together. A tear crossed her cheek without permission, but she didn't cry. No more. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you didn't have the strength to hear the truth. Now you do. Camila picked up the papers, carefully putting them away. Her heart was beating violently, not from pain, but from something new. Fury with a purpose. That night she didn't sleep. She stayed up reviewing every word of the documents, every name, every date. She realized that her story had begun long before she understood she was in the middle of one. And although she still didn't know how, she sensed that what she had just discovered was just the first page of the real book. Camila didn't sleep that night. Every sheet, every line, every stamp on the documents Mr. Ignacio had given her became a blow to her naivety. Her mind went through all the scenes from the past, looking for signs she had previously refused to see. The way Julian rushed her to get married, his sudden kindness toward her mother before she died, the seemingly innocent questions about her last name and her family. Everything took on a new meaning. It hadn't been a mistake, it had been a move. Morning came without warning. The sky was gray. Camila showed up at the community center as always, with a washed face and straight shoulders. The children greeted her as if nothing had changed, but she was no longer the same. The silence of the night before had made an incision in her soul, and something inside her had been lit. That afternoon, while organizing some books, Mr. Ignacio approached with his usual cup of tea in hand. You read it all, right? He asked softly. Camila nodded without looking up. Why did you never tell me before? Because you needed to find it alone. If I had told you, you would have rejected it. Your heart was too wounded, and when one bleeds inside, everything that enters becomes contaminated. Camila closed the book she had in her hands. What else do you know about my grandfather? Mr. Ignacio sat beside her, looking out the window for a few seconds before answering. I knew your grandfather in the courts. He was a quiet man but observant. He didn't talk much, but he listened too much. When he disappeared, everyone believed he had run away because of debts or a terminal illness. But there were those of us who thought there was something more. And what happened to his money? He moved it. He distributed it into hard-to-access accounts. Legally, he left everything to his only daughter, your mother. But since no body ever appeared and no death certificate was signed, his estate remained in legal limbo. Your mother never claimed anything. Maybe she didn't know, or maybe she didn't want to. And when she died, you became the direct heir, although no one officially informed you. Camila looked at him in silence. This man who seemed to be just an old reader of books turned out to be the guardian of a truth that changed everything. Do you think Julian knew before I did? Mr. Ignacio nodded. I'm almost certain he knew. And he knew thanks to someone on the inside, someone who knew your story well. Camila gritted her teeth. The image of Valerie appeared like a shadow in her mind. Always so close, always so curious about her mother's story. The times she jokingly asked if she would one day receive an inheritance. Everything was taking shape. I have to check. I need to know how far they went. Do you have any way to get your marriage certificate back? Camila hesitated. She then remembered Laura, an old friend who worked at the city hall. They hadn't spoken in years, but maybe she could help. That night she sent her a short message. The next day, Laura replied with "Call me." Camila dialed the number with sweaty fingers. Camila, my God, what a surprise. Are you okay? I need a favor, something delicate. Can you get me a copy of my marriage certificate with Julian Lopez? There was silence on the other end of the line. With him? I thought you were already separated. That's what I want to find out. Laura cautiously agreed. She promised to have something in a few days. Camila thanked her, her voice cracking. She hung up and sat still in the dark, wondering how many more truths were waiting to be found. 3 days later, Laura met her at a cafe. She was nervous. She carried a brown envelope in her hand. When she placed it on the table, her gaze was serious. Camila, what I found doesn't make sense. Here's the marriage certificate, but there's also a divorce decree signed more than 2 years ago. What? Here's your signature. Julian's too. and a notarial seal that says everything was validated at a city notary office. But you signed this. Camila took the document, reading it calmly. Her name, her ID number, the date, but the signature, that was not hers. It looked the same, but it wasn't. She knew as soon as she saw it, and yet it was there, stamped on a legal document. I never signed this. Ever. He falsified it. Laura looked at her with concern. This is serious, Cammy. Very serious. Camila put the papers away. In her chest, there was no sadness, there was fire. That night she returned to the community center. Mr. Ignacio was waiting for her with his cup of tea. When he saw her, he knew something had happened. What did you find? Camila let the documents fall onto the table. He falsified my signature. He divorced me without telling me. It was all planned. The old man read the document carefully. His face showed no surprise but resignation. It's no longer just pain, Camila. It's a fraud and it's serious. She nodded, pressing her lips together. So, what do I do now? Now we investigate more. Don't rush ahead. They're confident. They make mistakes when they think they've won. Over the next few weeks, Camila and Mr. Ignacio immersed themselves in a silent, precise routine. They gathered documents, analyzed public account movements, and looked for names linked to the new foundation. Camila learned fast. She read at night, took notes, and made mind maps. The woman who once cried in silence now became a meticulous investigator. The wound had transformed her. One Friday morning, while waiting in line at a cafe, she saw a TV program on a local screen that took her breath away. There were Julian and Valerie, dressed in formal wear, walking on a red carpet during the launch of a charity campaign. The presenter spoke with enthusiasm. The Future Horizon Foundation has successfully raised over $1 million for rural education. Its president, Valerie Rodriguez, and founding partner, Julian Lopez, have established themselves as leaders in the philanthropic field. Camila approached the screen. In the image, behind the podium, there was a sign with the foundation's logo, and right below it, in smaller letters, she read something that made her tremble. Project powered by the Rodriguez-Ortega legacy. Her surnames. Her 2 surnames. She felt her soul leave her body. They had used her lineage. They had not only stolen her love, they had stolen her name, her history. They turned her into a facade, a shield to clean up their image. She felt violated, invaded. She took a deep breath, took out her phone, and took a photo of the screen. Later, at the center, she showed it to Mr. Ignacio. They're using my last name. Openly. The old man watched her calmly. Then he went to his folder and opened a digital file. It was a legal succession document, and there, like a final stab, was the proof. Camila Rodriguez Ortega, direct heir. And right below it, another name appeared. Julian Lopez, active spouse, with a right to 50% of the estate. Camila let the document fall onto the table. She said nothing, just took a deep breath, like someone containing a storm in their chest. The narrator closes the chapter. What Camila didn't know was that while she was discovering the truth, they were already preparing their next move. Because when love becomes a strategy, the soul becomes a prize. And Camila was about to enter the most dangerous war of her life. The days following the revelation of the document were filled with a heavy silence. Camila woke up every morning with a strange feeling, as if something in the air had changed. It was no longer just sadness or anger. It was a contained energy, the beginning of a transformation that she herself didn't know how to name. At the community center, her routine continued. She taught the children, organized classes, and smiled at the mothers who dropped off their kids. But at night, when everyone had left, she stayed with Mr. Ignacio, reviewing more papers, analyzing names, dates, and signatures. That night, under the dim light of the center's old desk, Mr. Ignacio slid a different, thinner, more delicate folder toward her. "This is what you've been waiting for," he said bluntly. "The original succession file." Camila swallowed, running her fingers over the edge of the folder before opening it. She did so carefully, as if the air might tear the documents. The first paper was a notarial act. It said in clear letters that her grandfather, Damian Ortega, had left a fortune divided into properties, investments, and deposits hidden in trusts. None of it had been moved in over 20 years. The shocking part wasn't just the money, but the way everything was conditioned. Mr. Ignacio interrupted her before she got to the second page. "Read this carefully. Your grandfather didn't leave a classic will. He left precise instructions. He knew that if he died without making everything clear, people could come for what was his. That's why he set up legal traps." Camila continued reading. It stated that the direct beneficiary of the estate, upon the legal status of the holder being resolved, would be his direct descendant, meaning his daughter. But since her mother had passed away and no claim was made in her lifetime, the second in line was her. And here came the blow. The document stated that the legally active spouse of the beneficiary, in the case of being married, would have an automatic right to half of the assets if there was no previously signed waiver. Camila closed her eyes. Her heart was pounding. They knew. They knew before I did. Julian married me for this. Mr. Ignacio nodded. And when he saw the inheritance would be activated, he made you legally disappear. Camila felt a strange dizziness. It was as if her life had been split in two. The one before she knew this, and the one now. Who else knew? That's the most delicate part, Mr. Ignacio replied. I needed to be sure before I told you. I was discreet. I reviewed notarial movements, transfers, names of involved lawyers, and I found something. Valerie isn't just an accomplice. She's the legal co-administrator of the trust Julian created a week after he falsified the divorce. Camila stood still. She didn't need any more proof. Her cousin, her blood, her childhood sister, had signed her sentence. Her signature is here. She posed as your legal representative. It seems she signed a false authorization. She impersonated you. Camila took a deep breath. She closed the folder. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was an internal tremor, a sign that something inside her was breaking, never to be the same again. How much money is at stake? I can't give you the exact figure, but with the properties that are still valid and the accumulated interest in some trusts, it's more than $2 million. And that's not counting the appreciation of the rural land. Camila was silent. For years, she lived with just enough. She ate thanks to Martha. She slept on a borrowed sofa. She cleaned motels to survive while they used her name, her blood, and her inheritance to pose in magazines. What happens if I file a report? You have to, but first we must be smart. If you confront them without solid evidence, they'll bury everything. They don't just have lawyers, they have power, contacts, influence. Camila got up, pacing back and forth. So what do I do? Do I just wait? Mr. Ignacio smiled slightly. No. Now we're going to get them, but with intelligence, not with rage. Days passed, and Camila didn't stop investigating. She visited notary offices, requested certified copies, and spoke with public officials, many of whom looked at her with pity or disbelief when she explained her case. Some, upon seeing Julian and Valerie's names, made excuses. Others pretended not to know anything. Everything moved in the shadows. One night, Martha, who was still hosting her, came home with a serious expression. I ran into Sandra, the old housekeeper at Julian's house. She told me something I don't know if you should hear. Camila stopped what she was doing. What? Julian's mother, Mrs. Teresa, is sick. Very sick. She has neurological problems, lives alone, and is abandoned. Camila felt a bitter pang in her stomach. The woman who had humiliated her, who had mercilessly thrown her out, who had called her useless for not knowing how to seduce her son, was now alone and sick. And Julian hasn't visited her once in 3 months. Neither has Valerie. It seems she's no longer useful to him. For hours, Camila didn't say a word, but at the end of the day, she went to the closet, put on a gray jacket, and left without saying where she was going. The address hadn't changed. The same huge house with cold walls and an abandoned garden. She rang the doorbell. No one answered. She pushed the door. It was ajar. She entered cautiously. In the living room, everything was the same. The same pendulum clock, the same family portrait over the fireplace, but the air smelled of confinement. She went up the stairs. On the second floor, she heard an old radio. She opened the back door. There was Mrs. Teresa, sitting in a wheelchair with uncolored hair, pale skin, and empty eyes. She was staring into space like someone who no longer expected anything. When she saw Camila enter, she barely flinched. Camila approached with a firm step, stood in front of her, and looked at her without hatred. Only with truth. Do you remember me? The woman blinked. She made a slight gesture with her head. The day after my wedding, you told me I was no good for your son, that I was a graceless woman, unsensual, that I had disappointed him by being too prim. Mrs. Teresa swallowed, trying to speak. Only a dry whisper came out. And now, Camila continued without changing her tone, you're no good to him either. The woman closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. You were wrong about me. You underestimated me. You thought I would break, and I was about to. But it wasn't because of your words, it was because of the silence. For that silence that you, your son, and your niece fabricated to bury me alive. But you didn't count on one thing, I wasn't alone. The woman sobbed silently. It hurts to be abandoned. It hurts to be used and then ignored. Now you understand. And although I'm not happy about your condition, I won't pretend to feel pity. Because you taught me something valuable. You taught me what I never want to become. Camila turned on her heels. Before leaving, she stopped at the door. I don't hold hate. But don't ask for mercy. I already paid my price. Now it's your turn. She left the house without looking back. That night, while Renata was editing the final report, Camila prepared the folder she would hand over to the media. It was thick with certified copies, marked recordings, and notarial transcripts. Each page was a brick of truth. Each piece of evidence was a debt settled. Julian's foundation had organized a special event on a national television channel. It would be broadcast live. They would announce a new partnership with a multinational company to expand their project. Everything was a facade. Everything was a lie. Camila wouldn't miss that opportunity. Renata's team managed to coordinate a parallel interview to celebrate the success of resilient women, an excuse to place her in the same building where Julian would be. Everything had to be done with surgical precision. One wrong word, and everything would collapse. The day arrived. Camila dressed in a simple white blouse and black pants. She carefully styled her hair and put on a small butterfly-shaped brooch that had belonged to her mother. In her bag, she carried the folder. Her steps were firm. Her gaze was impenetrable. The channel was a chaos of lights, cables, and running technicians. Renata received her at the entrance. Everything's ready. In 15 minutes, you're on air. He's in the next room. Camila nodded. In the waiting room, she heard his voice. Julian was joking with a presenter. He was laughing. He sounded the same as always, but it no longer hurt her. He sounded hollow, fake, like an echo of someone who never existed. An assistant approached. Camila Rodriguez Ortega, ready to enter Studio 2. She got up, adjusted the strap of her bag, and walked toward the door. And there he was, Julian, in a blue suit, a measured smile, and a glass of champagne in his hand. When he saw her, his expression changed for a second. It was enough to confirm that he didn't expect to see her. Camila, what? Surprise, surprise, she said, showing him the folder. No, this was planned, but don't worry, this time you weren't the one who wrote the script. He tried to maintain his composure. What are you doing here? The same as you. I came to tell the truth, only mine doesn't need lights or makeup. He took a step toward her, trying to smile. Camila, can we talk? You've talked enough. I have everything. Your voice, your signatures, your lies, your inheritance disguised as charity. Julian's smile crumbled. What do you want? She looked at him calmly. Justice. And you're going to get it in front of everyone. Just as you humiliated me, now it will be your turn. But I won't use revenge, I'll use facts. The studio door opened. The presenter called her name. Camila took a deep breath. It's my turn. And she entered the set with the truth under her arm and dignity in her eyes. The studio lights didn't intimidate her. Neither did the assistants rushing around with headphones and folders, as if everything were a choreographed routine. Camila walked straight to the armchair assigned to her, opposite Julian's, on the other side of the coffee table that physically separated them, although what truly divided them was much deeper. An abyss of deceit, greed, and betrayal. The program host, a young woman with a sweet voice and a professional smile, greeted both of them with an artificial effusiveness that seemed to not perceive the tension in the air. Julian feigned normalcy, adjusting his jacket, smiling, but his hands were sweating. His gaze avoided Camila's. He knew she wouldn't be there without a solid reason, and he thought that reason could destroy him. The show began with classic segments, music, guest introductions, and flashes of previous images. The audience on the set applauded, unaware that they were seconds away from witnessing a scandal that would paralyze everything. The host spoke first. Today we have a special edition. Two people who once shared a story, but today they come with two very different truths. Camila Rodriguez Ortega, known for her volunteer work in rural communities, and Julian Lopez, a recognized businessman and philanthropist from his educational foundation. Camila listened attentively, not with nerves but with serenity, as if she were an outside observer watching a scene she had waited for years. And Camila, tell us what brings you to this space today. She took a deep breath, opened her purse, and took out the folder. She placed it on her lap carefully. Then she looked up. What brings me here is not a desire for fame or revenge. It's the need to reclaim what was taken from me without my knowledge. It's the truth and the right I have to be heard after years of silence. Julian frowned. The host tried to maintain control. Was something taken from you, Camila? My name, my inheritance, my dignity. I married this man believing in love. He abandoned me on our wedding night. Then I discovered that abandonment was part of a plan. He married me because he knew I was the heir to a fortune I didn't know about. He falsified my signature in a fraudulent divorce to keep 50% of it. He used my last name to create a foundation with my money, and he did it all with the help of my cousin and his mother. There was a chilling silence. The host blinked. She hadn't expected that answer. Do you have proof? Camila nodded, opened the folder, and took out the documents one by one. The original will, the signature comparison, the fake divorce certificate, the authorization signed by Valerie, the list of properties acquired in the name of the foundation using her grandfather's trust. Then she took out a small recording device. And I have his voice. Listen. Renata, from the technical room, had everything coordinated. The audio played clearly through the studio speakers. Memo for Valerie. Project activated. The notary contact signed without a problem. Camila will never find out. The inheritance is ours. It was so easy. She didn't even notice. She got married with her eyes closed. Julian turned pale. The audience on the set began to murmur. Some covered their mouths. The host turned to the production team for a signal. The broadcast, far from being cut, continued to air. Camila took advantage. For years, I worked cleaning bathrooms in motels while they traveled first class. They used my last name as a brand to launder money disguised as charity. I didn't ask to be part of this, but if I hadn't done anything, then I would have been an accomplice to my own silence. Julian stood up. His voice was trembling. This is a setup. This is all a lie. That recording is manipulated. Camila turned to him for the first time. Do you want me to also play the other recordings? The ones that mention how you got a City Hall employee to sign the papers without my presence? Or the one that talks about the bank accounts in the name of Future Horizon that are in Valerie Rodriguez's name without a tax declaration? Julian was speechless. The host, now without a smile, addressed the production team. Please confirm with the channel's legal team if we should continue this broadcast. From the back of the set, the producer made a hand gesture. Continue. The scandal was already viral. Hundreds of messages exploded on social media with screenshots of the exact moment Julian was exposed. At the end of the segment, Camila handed the evidence over to a prosecutor who was waiting for her backstage. Hours later, the police froze the foundation's assets. The accounts were intervened. Valerie was summoned to testify. Julian tried to flee the country, but was arrested at the airport with false documents. Days later, the case was in the headlines. Everyone wanted to know who the woman was who had faced an empire with just a folder, a recorder, and a clear gaze. Camila didn't give interviews. She didn't seek fame. She didn't sell her story. She just wanted peace. She returned to the community center where the children hugged her as always. There, with the help of Mr. Ignacio, she refounded her own organization. She didn't use the name Rodriguez Ortega as a brand. She used a new one born from the heart, the Rebirth Foundation. She dedicated it to women who had been betrayed, scammed, and silenced. She taught them about laws, self-esteem, finance, and rights. She spoke to them without victimhood, without resentment. She spoke to them from a healed wound. One morning, she received a letter with no return address. The envelope was white without markings. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for not giving up. Your story saved us. I thought it was my fault that I was born to suffer, but after listening to you, I understood that I can get out of here. Thank you for lifting me up when I didn't even believe I was capable of doing it. Camila put the letter in a wooden box, along with other similar messages. That corner in her small office was her true treasure. Days later, she visited Mrs. Teresa for the last time. The woman no longer spoke. Her gaze had almost completely dimmed. Camila sat in front of her, took her hand, and didn't say much. I didn't destroy you, I overcame you. That's something you never understood. That true victory isn't about sinking the other person. It's about continuing to walk without carrying their poison. The woman closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her thin face. Camila got up, kissed her on the forehead. Rest. It's all over now. And she left. Some time later, during a group session at her foundation, surrounded by women who smiled shyly, Camila shared her story without tears. It no longer hurt her. It was her fuel, her flag. When she finished the talk, a young woman asked, "And how did you not give up?" Camila smiled. Because I wasn't born to stay down. I was born to lift others up. The imaginary camera would slowly zoom out, showing those women sitting in a circle, some crying, others nodding, while Camila, standing, held her gaze like someone who no longer feared life. And that was her true revenge. One that didn't scream, one that didn't destroy, one that only healed.